get the show started. Thank you everyone for joining.
Awesome. Thank you, Karim. Just before we start, want to also acknowledge that the land that we are presenting from is built on unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. And the people of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land today. We'd also like to honor all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people for their valuable contribution for this land as well. Now I'm going to throw it over to my partner, Tim, who's going to get us kicked off.
Hi there, and thank you so much for coming to this special event tonight. This is something that we don't get to do a lot of, and this is the stuff that we absolutely love to do. We're all about education and supporting people that want to do things in the world of finance and music. That's our passion. So yeah, I think I started this company about 5 years ago. But before that, I was a musician. I still am a musician. I'm the guitar player in a band called Protest the Hero. And I was the lucky guy in the band that had the most responsibility and took the money to the bank and made sure things went smoothly and continued to be very involved in the financial aspects and the business aspects of the band outside of the musical side. I don't want to sound like I'm a victim, but I did experience some contract trauma, signed a bad record deal, signed a bad management deal, got sued by the label, got sued by two managers, been through it all at a very young age and came out the other end. And I think what I got from those experiences is I just always want to protect artists and help them understand the deals that they're signing and, making sure they're being honored. At the end of the day, the deal that we signed wasn't particularly a bad deal, but it wasn't being honored and policed properly. And, it was too bad, but we've moved on. And yeah, not too many people can say they've been a career musician for over 20 years. So I'm happy to say that I'm doing that and I'm still doing music. And I do find that being involved in music and also all of our staff being involved in music connects us in a different way to other artists, businesses, than some people that come to music accounting from the accounting world. But anyways, over the years, we've built this practice. As you can see, some of our clients are listed here, and it's just been such a wild ride to dive into this world and seeing people at all different stages and finding out how we can best support them with their finances. Mike and Johan are going to take it over, but Johan was employee one. We met over an online ad when I just kind of explained the mission of II, and he happened to live in my neighborhood, and we met at a Tim Hortons, and he started helping me with spreadsheets and eventually took over my portfolio so I could start bringing on more. And Mike was someone I'd worked in the past. He was Protest the Hero's first tour manager. And, he got a job after being a touring road manager for a while. And we always kind of just kept in touch. And I was like, I want you to come work for me one of these days. And all the stars aligned. And he's been with us for 3 years. And both have been doing some really impressive work in this field. So with that, I will send it over to Mike or to one of you, Johan or Mike.
I'll take it from here, buddy. Thanks, Tim. And thanks for making the connection. We, like Tim mentioned, we really love doing this. We are honored that you chose to spend your evening talking to us about business and finance. There's not a lot of people that want to talk about music, business, and finance, and that's totally our vibe. So thank you so much. We're honored to be here and speak with you. I also want to just say a huge thank you to Melanie, Karim, and Zoe and the entire OMIC team for their invite to be here today, and for their work collaborating on this workshop. They do some amazing work and they've helped prop up the Ottawa music scene, which was something I grew up in. So thank you so much for everything. So our goal tonight is to help you set yourself up for success for 2024. So we'll focus on some of the foundational business practices that we're consistently coaching our clients on. Now, often we, like Tim mentioned, we work with musicians, but we do work with non-musician, but music-related industries. So we work with some labels and some production companies, as well as some organizations that we just think are really cool and do creative stuff. So we've teamed up with them. So we've done our best to make this relevant for everyone, but these are the same tips and practices that we'll share with our clients, both big and small. Now, it's very difficult to build a sustainable business in any sector without a solid business foundation. And so we want to make sure that as opportunities come your way and your business's way, that you can jump on them when they're there and not have to worry about going back and getting all your ducks in order then. So we're going to focus on a few different pieces. We're going to walk through a few of the different business structure options you have when setting up your business. We're going to talk about the financial roles and responsibilities that might take place in a music-related business. And then we're going to talk about some of the key financial statements that are important for you to be familiar with as a measure of your business's health. Lastly, we're going to cover a little bit of some important notes on tax season, which we are in the midst of, and really happy to be taking a break from to be here with you. And then we've carved out a little time at the end to have space for your questions. Now, we know every business is different, and hopefully we can get a chance to hear what you're facing as a business and give you some advice there. Now, before we dive into the nuts and bolts of setting up your business for success, I want to talk about you, and I want to talk about your mindset. Now, one of the biggest barriers I think we face, we see artists face in their career, is not necessarily their lack of foundational business practices, but it's actually their fixed mindset around their ability to even learn those things. A lot of the time they're like, no way, I'm a musician. I stay away from that stuff. But if business and finance are definitely not for everyone, you don't want to make like a full-time career out of it. If that's not your thing, but if you genuinely want to have some success and do music for a living, you need to understand how your business operations are going to work. So how does mindset help with that? Well, this amazing woman is not one of our clients, but it's Dr. Carol Dweck. I am a huge fan of her, just as much as I'm a huge fan of Propagandhi. She's amazing. In the past, over her 30-year plus career, she's spent it researching the impact mindset has on one's ability and growth. And the research she's discovered is pretty astonishing. So I want to just take 2 minutes to look at a quick video that just gives a good overview of the amazing work that she's done through her research. Just going to switch my audio here so you can hear it.
Researcher and Professor Carol Dweck.
Can you hear that? Sorry, I just want to check.
Yeah, it's good, Michael.
Uses the term mindset to describe the way people think about ability and talent. Dweck delineates between two different mindsets that exist on a continuum. The first is the fixed mindset, which suggests that your abilities are innate and unchangeable. The second is a growth mindset, which views it as something you can improve through practice. In a fixed mindset, you view failure as permanent, but with a growth mindset, you see failure as a chance to learn and even pivot. Those with a fixed mindset are more likely to view critical feedback as a personal attack, while those with a growth mindset will see it as a chance to improve, where they can develop new systems. With a fixed mindset, you're more likely to choose easier tasks and put in minimal effort. After all, if talent is fixed, why bother improving? Why even try? But with a growth mindset, you're more likely to embrace challenging tasks and work hard to improve. Those with a fixed mindset are likely to give up when they face an obstacle. Meanwhile, those with a growth mindset will view obstacles as a chance to experiment and solve problems. In a fixed mindset, the focus is on measurable accomplishments. But with a growth mindset, the focus is more on a journey of continual improvement. With a fixed mindset, you're less likely to take creative risks. But with a growth mindset, creative risks are simply a way to innovate and improve. Ultimately, your mindset influences everything from creative risk-taking to how you view feedback to whether or not you finish difficult tasks. And in the end, it's one of the greatest factors in determining whether or not you grow and improve in your abilities.
Awesome. So I love that video. They do a great job of covering kind of the broad strokes of growth mindset. And in this presentation, I can't cover all the golden nuggets that come out of Carol Dweck's mind. So I highly recommend that everyone goes out and gets her book Mindset. I get no royalties from that, I promise. It's just that good. The book covers everything from parenting with a growth mindset all the way to running a business with a growth mindset. And for a lot of businesses and business leaders, growth means an increase in revenue. But that is really only one measure. Growth-minded leaders and organizations believe in a continuous cycle of improvement, as the video talked about. And it's through this process of skill development, executing, and then reflecting and applying feedback, both on what you did positive and where you can improve, that we grow. And that's what the research shows. It's really astonishing. I suggest everyone picks up a copy of the book. But we apply the same approach with our organization, and we apply the same approach with the development of our clients and their businesses. It's all about incremental growth and tackling things one at a time until you get to them into a place where you feel like, you know, I've gotten a grasp of this. It's the power of yet. You might not be able to do something now, but it doesn't mean you can't do it down the line. It's just you haven't done that yet. Oh, skip that. There we go. So how does a growth mindset help you? Well, odds are whatever skills you currently have that you're successful with didn't just magically appear, or you didn't just magically acquire them, but rather you develop them over time. I'm sure if you're shredding on your guitar, you didn't just pick up a guitar and start shredding. You sat in your basement learning chord after chord after chord. Now, I know a ton of musicians who earn a great living making music, yet they still take music lessons to grow their craft, to learn new instruments and grow their ability. And that's a perfect example of what we're talking about when we talk about growth mindset. However, you take those same musicians and you put them in a conversation around finance and business, and their inner fixed mindset pops out and goes, oh, whoa, I'm a musician. I don't do this stuff. I'm closing the door on this. And they just glaze over. Well, Dweck's work dispels this notion and tells us that when we reframe challenges as opportunities to grow, it's a game changer in our development. Okay, so I just wanted to take a moment, as we are we're in the thick of tax season. This is a time I hear a lot of people reflecting on, I should have, I didn't do this, I told myself I would. My challenge and our challenge to you is to anyone beating themselves up for past failures from this year, things they should have done better to set their business up, is to reframe those failures as opportunities to grow and to move forward. Okay, so a few really simple tips. You have to actually listen for that inner fixed mindset that's telling you, hey, that's not in your realm of what you can do. You're a musician. That's not true. Recognize it though, and then recognize next that you have a choice to move in a different direction. And as silly as it sounds, the power of that positive thinking and talking to yourself and reminding yourself of times where you didn't just start with that innate ability to play guitar or drums or sing, but it was learned, right? That same mentality applies. And the last but most important piece is to certainly not dwell on your past mistakes, but to rather put a plan into place and move to that point of action. Rather than kicking yourself and saying, oh, I didn't track my expenses, get out a spreadsheet and start today. In this workshop, we've done our best to distill some of the most important first steps you can take in giving structure to your dreams and to your business. So hopefully some of those tools can support you moving forward with a growth-minded approach to your business development. Now, on top of growth-minded having a growth mindset, wanted to also highlight some of the other key traits we see in some of the most successful business leaders and businesses that we work with in the industry. So in addition to a growth mindset, I think a great leader will always have a vision of the end state. Now, you might not always get to that exact end state, but a good leader will know where they want to point the direction of the business. And that is a really important part, especially as you bring a team on board. You want to be able to provide that direction and vision, even when you're collaborating. Next is discipline. Now, discipline, I'm sure most people in this room have something that they have great discipline around, but we're talking about expanding this and ensuring that we're practicing that discipline in everything that we do, especially these practices we're going to share with you today. Adaptability is another key one. In business, I think very little goes exactly to plan. In the music business, probably even less. So this is all about your ability to pivot, which is a really important piece. And then the last piece is the talent management skills. And this is all about knowing what your business needs, whether this is the crew you're bringing on the road with you, the band you're building around you, or your operation in the business that you're building. You need to be able to identify what skills you possess, what skills you need others to have, so you can build an effective business around that. Now, remember, we're all growing. So if you're looking at this list and you're like, wait, I don't have all these, you got to stop. Remember the last slide. This is an opportunity. A lot of us beat ourselves up when we see these type of lists. We're like, oh, I don't have all. I'm sure you actually have all 5 of these in different realms of your life. It's all about bringing that practice to your business and applying it in that way. Now, as we dive into what we feel are those foundational steps to setting up your business for success, hopefully you'll start to see where these traits will be essential in setting you in your growth. Now, want to shift gears a little bit and talk about what you're actually leading here. Business structure, when we're talking about business structure, is actually all about legitimacy and bringing legitimacy to what it is that you do in the music industry. So Johan is going to walk us through some of the considerations when you're looking at what business structure is right for you. And so I'll throw it over to him.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so I figure we can go through and talk about the different types of businesses that we typically encounter in our practice. The most popular one, and the one that probably applies to most of us here, is the sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorship is a business is basically owned by one person. It's pretty often that we see that, solo artist is like a good example of that. For sole proprietorship, there's no special requirements other than filing for a business license and registering your business name. It's important to note that sole proprietorships are not legally separate from their owners. So in the eyes of the CRA, they see you, the business owner, and the business as one legal entity. This is important to note because sole proprietorships are subject to something called unlimited liability, which essentially means that the court can legally force you to sell your personal belongings to cover your business's debts. And yeah, because the CRA doesn't recognize the business owner and the sole proprietorship as 2 separate entities, the business's profits and losses are filed and reported on the owner's personal income tax return. Okay, the other type of business that we typically see are partnerships. Partnerships and sole proprietorships have a lot in common. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about the difference. The big difference between a partnership and a sole proprietorship, which might seem obvious, is there are more than one business owners. Typically, there's also a written or oral agreement between the business owners to decide how profits and losses will be shared. Other than that, partnerships share a lot of the same similarities to sole proprietorships. There's no special requirements to start the business other than filing for a business license and registering your business name. And partnerships are also subject to unlimited liability. Similar to sole proprietorships, the profits and the losses for the partnership would be reported on each partner's personal tax return. And last but not least, corporations. Not everybody is at the point where they can incorporate. Typically, there is a revenue threshold when it comes to incorporation as well. Some costs make it a little bit prohibitive to get incorporated, but there are a lot of benefits to incorporating. The biggest one is the business is seen as a separate legal entity from the owner. Corporations are essentially treated as like another person. So they have same rights and duties and responsibilities of a person, and they're liable for their own acts and debts. This is important to know because the owners of a corporation or the shareholders are not actually liable for the corporation's acts or debts. This is very important to note because what this means, it means that the shareholders have limited liability. So if things went bad with the corporation, their liability is limited to just what they've invested into the company. One of the benefits of this limited liability, sorry, Mike,
No, it's okay.
that it allows corporations to raise funds, which is not something that can be done in a sole proprietorship or a partnership. As most of you might know, corporations sell their shares to investors for capital. So this allows them to raise money without necessarily having additional managers for the company. It's a very huge benefit. And the last point to note here for corporations is just how the taxes are treated. Because it's a legal separate entity, a corporation files its own taxes, and then the shareholders, or the owners, will also file their own personal tax return.
Thanks, Johan. So those are the three common business structures we'll come across in our work in the music industry. But want to kind of, again, not knowing the situation you're currently in, give you what the takeaways are from this. So considerations to keep in mind. Number one, and the most important thing, do not wait. If you plan on doing music for a living, do not wait, get legit as fast as you can. I cannot tell you the amount of times I've overheard conversations, Johan, Tim, about musicians talking about how they're keeping things under the table. Now, while that might end up saving you some income tax, if a few thousand here or there on your income tax that year, it will basically make scaling your business next to impossible. With like all the technologies out there, there's tools like Owner, OWNR. It's never been more easy or cheap to start a business. It's around $100 to start a sole proprietorship, and it goes up from there. But there's really no reason not to go legit. Building off that point, going legit also means having a paper trail. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, paper trail, that sounds horrible. It requires some work and organization, but this opens one of the best doors ever. This opens the doors to grants, loans, investment, and importantly, just benchmarking historical data on your business so you know what you've done. And when you reflect and plan, you can look at that. So the sooner you jump the shark, and the sooner these become opportunities you can explore. Now, we live in a country with programs like Factor. That is such a gift. And so without a paper trail, you cannot access that stuff. So again, going to the point, scaling becomes very difficult if you're not planning to be legitimate on paper. Now, every business is different, so it's hard to tell you what's right for you. But I think Johan and Tim and I would say probably about 9 times out of 10, when you're starting your business, you're probably a sole proprietorship. And, you know, it's a low cost, it's easy to do. You start your business, and then you can always scale it up from there. That's not a complicated thing to do. Where you'd want to avoid is what Johan mentioned, is we've seen cases where people have a lot of corporations and the operations expense actually outweigh what their income is. And that's not a position you want to be in, where your taxes and everything just to have a corporation actually costs more than what you're bringing in. So really important to maybe start small and then scale up from there based on need. All right. So now, as you and your business grow, you'll likely find yourself in this new place where you have more work than you're able to do all alone. And that's like a really exciting and stressful milestone in your business's growth. But it's something hopefully a lot of us will cross that threshold, and it'll probably happen a few times as you hopefully grow your business. So how do you build an effective team around you? Well, this is where those talent management skills I was talking about come in really handy. This is where your vision comes in really handy. And as you work to understand what will be the right team for the business that I'm building. So I'm going to throw it over to Johan. He's going to walk us through kind of a typical structure that we'll see, and we'll talk about some of the considerations there as well.
Sir. Yeah, figured we'd talk about this example because this is a pretty typical example that we see in the industry. Of course, we acknowledge that this isn't going to be the structure that's applicable to everybody's business, but we've definitely found that these tasks are more or less covered by somebody in every kind of business. So who is doing these particular tasks in your business? Oftentimes it might be decided on how big a business is. Typically, what we would see is we would have our artist as the owner of the business. And typically when they come to us, the artist, the owner is also the bookkeeper, business manager, and sometimes depending on their financial proficiency, sometimes they're their own accountants as well. Which is great for us. You know, as business managers, we surely encourage our clients to be more involved in the day-to-day aspects of their business. Where this becomes detrimental is if you as your business owner start spending too much time on these tasks that it's taking away from your ability to generate revenue. So this is where it comes in handy to have a team around you. Typically what we'll see is we'll have a 3-person team where there is a bookkeeper who is doing all of the day-to-day admin tasks related to your business. So this would involve, you know, entering all the transactions that are coming in and out of your credit cards, organizing your receipts, you know, all the tedious stuff that people typically put off. But you know, it's really important to have somebody dedicated to this kind of task is actually essential in building a strong foundation for your business. The next level up from the bookkeeper is usually the business manager / accountant. Again, depending on the talent that you find, you might find a business manager that's also an accountant, and that's great. You can sort of save yourself that extra cost. In our business, we sort of double as a business manager and the accountant. So what we do is we have our bookkeepers who will prepare all of that, the transactions, the daily transactions and stuff. And us as the business managers, we're ensuring that the business is running properly on a day-to-day business. We're working with you and your team to build all the budgets and planning all the upcoming business activities. We're preparing invoices, collecting payments, managing cash flow, paying your employees, paying you. And in our case here, the final step, which usually goes to an accountant, is the accountant will take all the information from your business manager and your bookkeeper and compile that into financial statements. Now, this is super important because your financial statements are essentially what will give you insight into how your business is running. It's also super important because it's valuable for investors to be able to see what your business is doing, to encourage them to want to invest in you and your business. And last but certainly not least, your accountant will use your financial statements to prepare your tax filing, which is super crucial, as you all know.
Awesome. Thanks, Johan. So a few considerations when we're looking at this. I want you to put, again, going back to kind of mindset, you got to think of yourself as the CEO of your career. Now, I want to be clear when I say that. This doesn't mean you have to wear a suit every day. We all have those pictures of the C-suites or maybe the bosses we currently have while we're trying to do our side hustle. We're like, I'm going to get out of here and I'm never going to be like that boss. At least that's who I was. But this is more about a tool to foster your growth mindset, as well as a reminder of who is in control of this business, which is you. That's something that we often have to remind some of our clients about even. No one is at the end of the day going to care about your business more than you. So you need to work to understand it. Even if you hate numbers, you want to understand it so you can recognize the skills to put together the team that will be able to do what you envision your business is going to do. Another important consideration, don't bottleneck your dreams. The work you put into organizing your business now will pay off down the road, whether you're hiring your team and you know exactly what the duties and tasks are that you need them to do, or when you're signing with a label or manager. All this is information that as you build your business, whether it's internally or partnering with others, that you're going to be able to share and lead your business through. Cost considerations. Now, as Johan mentioned, we know not everyone can just hire a business manager, bookkeeper, and accountant. that's a certain level of success and revenue that you need to generate to do that. But how can you restructure your current setup? My career started 20 something years ago as the guy that slept on the couch in the jam space. And one day I was like, oh, I'll figure out how to print merch. And from there, you just grow incrementally. So maybe you have someone already in that group that you consider your part of your family business or your business structure that you can kind of bring into the fold and help with some of this administrative stuff until you get to that point that you can hire a professional bookkeeper. A lot of this really is at this level about organizing and making notes on what those transactions are. And there's a lot of people, as long as they're trustworthy, that can do that. You don't even need to, they don't need access to your bank account or anything like that. Now, it also comes in handy when you're talking about succession planning or business continuity. One of my greatest mentors told me the second she gets a new job, she starts looking for a replacement. And that's not because she has a dream to get out of that job, but she knows that she will grow. And at some point, there'll be a new opportunity. And for her to take that opportunity, she needs to be able to set up the next person behind her for success. I want you to take that same mentality into mind as you grow and look for these bigger opportunities for whatever your business is. You want to make sure that you understand exactly what you need to pass to others, and who those people could be in your network, because you won't be able to take on that opportunity until you backfill whatever that work is, or you'll just drown in the work. So the end game here, whether you're doing this on your own or with a team, is to run and grow a sustainable business. That's what we're talking about here. And how will you know if you're doing that, or how will you know what sustainable looks like? That's where we come to financial statements. Now, financial statements are probably one of the key cornerstones of what we do. And we produce financial statements on the regular for our clients that help give them different windows of insight into their business and operations. We want to take a little bit of time right now to review the 3 most common and important reports that are a clear measure of your business's health.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the balance sheet. I'm fairly confident that everybody has at least seen a balance sheet once in life. If you've ever been interested in the stock market or invested or anything along those lines, even your bank would produce a balance sheet. They're really quite common, and they're very important to kind of get an overall glimpse at a business at a specific period in time. So typically, you'll see a balance sheet issued on a yearly basis. For larger corporations, they maybe even do it quarterly. The reason is it gives a good overview about the health of your business. As you can see in the small example that we've got here, on the balance sheet, you'll see all of the business's assets, which would include all the cash, your accounts receivables, equipment, if you own it, basically anything that has value that you can sell, convert to cash, or have cash readily available. Those would be considered your assets. Your liabilities on the other side of your balance sheet would include things like your accounts payable, your credit card balances, your GST payable if you've had any, if you've taken out a loan or any sort of liability that's owed to somebody right now. On the other side of your balance sheet is also your equity. Equity shows the owner's stake within the company. So on a very high level, somebody can look at your balance sheet and get an idea of more or less how the business is doing. So like in my example here, total assets for this business in the example here is $10,000. If an investor is just looking very high level at the balance sheet, they can look and they can see that the liabilities for this particular company is only about $6,000. This is a pretty good indication that the company is in a good financial position because there's more assets available if they need to liquidate, to sell, and clear their liabilities. Very important report, but it does not show the revenues and expenses or other sort of day-to-day business activities that would impact your day-to-day business health. That would bring us to this report here, the income statement. Income statement is probably the most popular one It is definitely the most used for sole proprietors. It will show all of the revenue that the business is earning over a specific period of time and all of the expenses related to that revenue. So this is critical in understanding the profitability of your business, right? Because it gives you insight into how effective your operations are, how effective your management and your business strategies are. So let's say you decided 1 year you wanted to try to increase your revenue by increasing your advertising budget, for example. You'd be able to look at that kind of information on your profit and loss statement to see if there's an actual increase in revenue relative to your increase in advertising, for example. So the income statement short story is a very powerful tool to understand where your business is at. And the last one, which I personally feel is the most underutilized one, is the statements of cash flow. So the other two statements are prepared using something called the accrual method, which is a fancy accounting way of saying we recognize the money and the expenses as soon as they occurred. In the real world, that doesn't mean much. We are dealing with cold hard cash. So what the statements of cash flow does is it eliminates all of those accounting entries that make up the other statements, and it just shows you pure cash in and out of the company. These reports are super crucial when you're trying to get a credit, for example, or even if you're going to the bank, you're trying to get a loan or something like that. These are typically the reports that the banks and creditors like to see because it shows actual cash. So in short, these three really do provide a lot of different insights into the company's health, the profitability, and overall efficacy of the business operations. Beneficial for both internal users like your CEOs or even your management team, and external users, maybe investors, maybe your bank. So that's why it's really important to have these available if you can.
All right, so key considerations when we're talking about the financial statements. In short, we believe organization is queen, full stop. The degree of organization that you dedicate now to your business will help you grow. And especially when you get to those points of transition where you are stretched out because your growth has gotten to a point you can't possibly do everything yourself, that organization is going to help you onboard people, ask for support, show people what your business is doing, perhaps get investment. But that organization now is essential, because going back when you start getting a whole bunch of inflows to develop these habits will only feel like a big mountain to climb. Okay, what I can't stress this enough is learning to produce these reports and read them will teach you the building blocks of your business. So you might look at those now and kind of do that gloss over and go, oh, I don't want to look at that. If you dedicate yourself to just producing these for your accounts on your own, it's very straightforward. You'll start to understand how important, especially when you're starting with small amounts. If you're starting with small amounts of different income, like you have one source of income and a few expenses, this is the time to practice this stuff. So as it grows and gets more complicated, so does building the report. And just to that final point, building that discipline and rigor now will help you move from that place of making gut decisions about your business to making really informed decisions about your business. Like Johan mentioned that example of let's dump advertising money in it to get more revenue. That might not actually have worked, and you won't know unless you have the data to look at it. So it's really essential that you do that. Now, if you're doing this all on your own, we want to share like our key pieces of best advice. This is regardless of the size of the client. These are the key points that we discuss with almost everyone that we work with, and are the most common challenges we'll see when we're either taking over or helping a business develop. So most common mess we clean up is weeding through transactions with clients to figure out what was personal and what was a business expense. We spend a lot of time doing that. The second you launch your business, open a dedicated business account and credit card. And if you can't do the credit card piece, then just do the business account. But it's essential to separate those things early. Again, do it when it's less complicated and you're having a few transactions maybe a month. but it's so important still. Don't fall back on the excuse, oh, it's just a few transactions. It's an important step in making sure your business is solid. Go digital. We've all set up our own makeshift filing systems. I'm equally as guilty in the past, using wallets and accordion folders and just being like, yeah, I'll find that in 12 months. Take pictures of your invoices, take pictures of your receipts, and save your records on the cloud preference of your choice. But we live in the digital age. If you're ever onboarding, business managers or anyone, they're going to need digital copies of things. So just jump to that place now. Each month, pull copies of your bank statement and credit card statement and put it into that same file that you keep all those expenses in. That's going to come in those are important business documents and will come in handy when I talk about reconciliation in a second. You promise yourself that you're going to remember this, but make notes directly on your receipts and remind yourself what the context of that expense was. Because it's really easy in that moment to be like, oh yeah, I'll remember this was lunch with Johan at a business lunch, but you won't in 6 months or 12 months. So it is just write it right on the receipt, snap the picture and put it away. That way you know what it's for and you don't have to, make any guesses as you come down the line. And then lastly, this one is rarely done, but we would give everyone gold stars if they started doing this. If you really want to get the load off your back for your next tax season, I highly encourage you to reconcile your business account and your credit card at the end of each month. Now, reconciliation is another one of those really fancy accounting words, which basically means that at the end of each month, make sure all the transactions that happened on your bank account, your inflows and outflows, match up with everything you've tracked. If they don't, then in the moment, you can figure out what that discrepancy is rather than, looking back 6, 12 months and going, oh, why doesn't this balance? What's missing from here? If you do that now, each month, then by the time you get to tax season next year, you'll have your finances in a really, really healthy place. And lastly, this one's kind of, again, for bonus points. It's really, a budget is just simply stating, here's what I plan to spend in these different expenses, and here's what I plan, here's the revenue I plan on receiving through this time period. Try and build a budget and try and monitor that cash flow. Again, it's so much easier to build these skills when you're starting maybe with smaller amount of transactions. And then when you scale, you can scale up that practice or bring in someone to support. All right. Before we take some time to answer your questions, we just want to address the elephant in the room. It is tax season. So we just want to review a few key dates and information with all of y'all.
Yeah, this is just an FYI more than anything else. Most of us are probably sole proprietors, so friendly reminder that you have until June 15th to file your tax. Because June 15th falls on a Saturday this year, it's going to be the next available business day, which is going to be June 17th, the Monday. Very important note as well is even though your taxes are due to be filed in June, if you owe taxes, they need to be paid by April 30th to avoid late penalties. For corporations, it's a little different. We probably don't have too many corporations in here, but a corporation doesn't necessarily need to have a year end that ends in December. But for the ones that do end in December, you would be filing within 6 months after the end of your fiscal year. But similar to sole proprietors, even though they're giving you all of this time to file, you have basically 2 or 3 months to pay your taxes owing. Just to make a note there, it's 2 or 3 months because there's a caveat there. It's 3 months if you're a Canadian-controlled private corporation. I know it's a lot of words, but if this applies to you, you'll know what that means. And then you're curious as to if it applies to you, reach out to us and find out. You'll also note that the GST filing dates are also very similar to the actual income tax filing dates as well. So just to kind of keep that in mind and start getting ready for the season. Your bookkeeper and your accountant will be happy that you're being proactive.
Awesome. Great. So thank you for your attention. I know it's a lot of information. We do want to take some time to hear your questions, thoughts, comments, and feedback. Thanks for all your attention. Appreciate it.
Yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to either write them in the chat or just unmute and ask. We have one question from Melanie already. Can you quickly touch on how to register as a business, please?
Yeah, there's a few ways. The easiest there is a service by RBC called Owner. If you're located in one of the regions that they serve, Ontario is one. And you can very simply go on there and look at a few different. They have a package, I believe, for the sole proprietorship, and they have a package, I believe, for corporations. We use it because, especially for corporate registration, it really lowers the cost. It cuts out kind of some of the, if you don't have a super complicated business, or if you're a single person starting a corporation and don't need to figure out shareholder agreements or anything like that, it's a really simple one-stop shop. And they also, part of the package is you can have a digital minute book. And so regardless of your sole proprietorship or corporation, that's a really good tool to use. We don't make any royalties off that either, but I do find it really useful. Johan, Tim, do you want to jump in either? You can also, I think there's a lot of companies you can hire to do it, but Owner's the cheapest I've found, and it's very straightforward.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that I think, what is it, the Ontario service or business registration? You can do it through that. Generally, their back end isn't as friendly as Owner, but that's what is it? I think it's the Ontario business registration is where you can do it, and that's what Owner is doing, is registering through that. So that's an alternative.
I think their bread and butter is kind of making a better user interface than the back end or the front end of like any of the government websites. It's just very easy to enter your details and they'll take care of everything. Great question.
We also have one from Veronica. Do you recommend to register an HST number if you haven't reached the 30K threshold?
Oh, that's
We
a great
definitely
question.
get this one pretty often. Honestly, if you're close enough to be considering that, it's probably a good move to do it. Because essentially what will happen is if you hit that threshold halfway through the year, for example, you're going to have to go back and start filing GST from that point. So it's probably better to register and be ahead of it than to not. Thanks for your question, Veronica.
Yeah, and if I can chime in, I'll say to Mike's point, I think it's a good idea to do it. It's a little bit of extra work, but this is a habit that you're hoping to have to do when your business hits that threshold. So why not start early? And you could be getting a refund and, missing out on ITCs that get credited back to you. So yeah, if you're up for it, I would encourage you to go for it.
Right. Any other questions? Do you recommend QuickBooks?
We recommend
love
any
QuickBooks.
software. Too many people come to us honestly, and it's just like a wall of information in an Excel sheet. And they're like, here, make this make sense. If on a very basic level, you just have like Wave Zero, there are a lot of free accounting softwares that you can go on. They're very intuitive. We highly, highly encourage you to get on any accounting software you can. It doesn't have to be QuickBooks. We use QuickBooks a lot and we find it to be very powerful, but there are cheaper options out there and free options. So please definitely get some accounting software.
Yeah, Wave, as Johan mentioned, there's a free option and then a paid option. Wave is a reliable free option. And for anyone that hasn't used something like QuickBooks, essentially they pull all the transactions in from whatever your business account or credit card are, and you're able to then have that list instead of maybe on an Excel, and you have the ability to then categorize what these are as expenses, income, what type of expense, what type of income, all of that stuff. It really can make your life a lot easier. And whatever business managers you hire when you grow to be that massive success that you plan on being will be indebted to you.
Yeah, I'll add to that just to say sometimes it's intimidating to get started, and it might be worthwhile to hire a business manager, a bookkeeper, someone familiar with the software to just set it up for you. So even if it's an hourly thing and they're charging you $50 or $70 an hour, 2 or 3 hours, they can get you set up and then you can maintain. And you know, that's exactly how I learned. I was thrown into a file that was already set up and I just maintained it. So if you have any questions, it's good to reach out and get that support, and, you know, build a relationship there. But a lot of the data entry stuff is, you know, anyone can really do it with a little bit of practice.
I think they have a personal option QBO now, which is like $15 a month for very simple sole proprietorship businesses. So scale from there. Any last questions?
Can I just jump in? If I'm happy to. Oh, Celeste has a question. I was just going to talk about a couple of war stories that I've
Oh, I
learned.
love that.
But let's take Celeste's questions first.
Yeah. Are you able to merge QuickBooks with another software? I use Square, but only because I'm a visual artist that sells prints.
Short answer is yes. Most softwares play fairly well with each other. So I don't think you would have any issues importing any sort of data into pretty much any accounting software.
Right.
The power of the CSV file.
We also have a question from Jesse. Do you mind explaining what you do at II and what services you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all three of us are business managers. And at Ottawa Music, we offer full service business management. So we can do anything from bookkeeping to business management. We'll do everything from debt management to tour management, financial management. We really try and do the whole scope. We've just started working with an amazing partner on some great royalty work. So we're expanding into that space right now. Yeah, anything you want to add in, Johan?
You're muted.
I think you kind of covered it. We basically will do anything that you need done, more or less. From entering things to looking over your deals, preparing your financial statements, getting your taxes filed, helping with your personal finance if that's what you need us for. We basically do it all.
Quite often we tend to be brought into a team. So we'll work with music managers, I should say. And so usually they're our closest ally and partner in steering a career. They'll usually take the lead on the opportunities, and we'll take the lead on making sure that those opportunities come into the bank account, and that bills are paid and all that stuff, and the operation keeps moving forward. So we're very collaborative, but we like we said at the top, as all of us grew in different music scenes and are artists of our own right, we really feel that we want to pay forward as much as we can of the knowledge we've learned. So we really just try to support where we can. Even if it's just advice, we'll usually try our best to provide that.
I just want to touch really quick on the HST question, because I think it's important to know, especially if you're going into an album cycle and you're about to spend a ton of money on a record. Sometimes it's worth getting an HST number there so that you know that you can get some of that money back if you're going to be spending a lot of HST. I did that when I put a record out, and I knew that a lot of my musicians in the studio, et cetera, were going to charge me HST. The other thing with HST that's interesting, just as a little tidbit, if you have registered for HST and you know 1 month you're going to, or if you file monthly or quarterly or per year, if you know that you're going to pay a lot in HST based on your QuickBooks report or however you're filing, you might want to make a decision around that time to spend money in HST. So for example, like if you know that you're going to owe a lot in HST, well, maybe now's the time to buy that computer or buy that guitar. That's going to help you with your career moving forward. So just like a couple of little things there. Another just little tidbit
Love
of
that.
advice based on experience: don't be late on your taxes, because when you owe, it'll really kick you in the teeth. And then if you're late multiple times, you get dinged even more. So yeah, it's really important, I think, to get a footing on all of that stuff and to understand what you're doing with taxes. And it is a business. And I think, like, as musicians, I know myself, when I was starting out, I was like, this is my heart, this is fun, this is my identity, this is cool. But I wasn't really taking it seriously as a business. But it is really important. And in the eyes of the CRA, like, if you're losing money year after year, they're going to look at you more, and they're going to question, why is this not just a side hustle for you? And why is this not just a hobby for you? So really, if you're going in that direction, that you want to make this a career, you need to see yourself as the CEO of a business, and that business should be successful if you're going to continue. So really important to think of it that way.
Thank you for adding that. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Amazing. Well, it is 8 o'clock. Thank you all for your questions, and thank you so much, Michael, Tim, and Johan, for this hour of financial literacy. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us, like anything coming up that you'd like to share with the group?
We have hopefully we can send this deck out to everyone, but you can feel free to reach out to us if you are in a position where you need business management or advice. Our firm is very busy right now, but we're always happy to hear from people and do our best to support where we can. I would encourage everyone to go get Wave. It's the free software we mentioned. Again, no royalties from them either. But to the point that we've been hammering over the head, start now when things aren't complicated so you can grow. And then lastly, Tim, our founder, his band Protest the Hero will be playing the Ottawa area, and I will be there. So why not come and talk to us about your business questions and catch a show? And that will be, I think, May 31st at the Bronson Center. So yeah, happy to come by if you want to chat about your business. I will be there.
Awesome. Also at the Bronson Center on May 16th is the Capital Music Awards, which you should all come to. I'm leaving a link. Oh yeah, and become an OMIC member if you aren't already. We're also very thankful to the City of Ottawa and Ontario Creates for allowing these educational sessions to occur. And with that, thank you so much, all of you, for tuning in. This was recorded, so we will be sharing this recording with everyone, and we may also have some resources that we'll share via email. So look out for those. We've also got a grant clinic on April 10th. Registrations will open very soon, so also look out for that in our newsletter or on social media. And with that, thank you so much. Thank you so much, II. Have a great night, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.